One topic that often creates quite a buzz among gardeners is the art of beekeeping. Bees give us honey, but they're also helpful in a lot of other ways. Here to tell us about beekeeping is Gary Johns. Hello, Gary.
Hi, Steve. How you doing?
Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Gary's going to tell us a little bit about beekeeping. And Gary, bees, they do provide honey, sweet, nice honey for the table, but they also do a lot of other things for us. And can you just tell us about some of those?
Yeah, there's actually several products that the bees will produce that come out of the hive that we can utilize. One of them is honey, obviously the most obvious. Another is wax. We can use that for bee candles or wax candles, and also they use it in the makeup industry for cosmetics. There's also pollen. Bees collect pollen, so we can use the pollen to supplement proteins and such of that nature. There's also propolis, which is a sort of a sap that comes from trees or shrubs, bushes, that also has antibiotic properties in it. So the medical industry is starting to look at propolis as useful for them.
Okay.
And then I believe the last one is royal jelly, which is produced by the worker bees themselves. It's fed to the queen and also to the pupa, but it's a very good ingredient itself.
Okay. And in the garden, bees are important for our fruit trees and our vegetable plants?
Oh yes, oh yes. Pollination is one of the key elements that bees in the United States are used for now at this point. They are such a wonderful item to carry the pollen from flower to flower and plant to plant. They're very nectar or pollen specific. Actually, it's more nectar specific. Mm-hmm. They'll go there and work a flower until that particular nectar plays out. Consequently, that is how that flower gets pollinated, or shrub or tree gets pollinated very good.
You get that fruit or those vegetable fruits going there. Well, Gary, when it comes to beekeeping in Oklahoma, are there a lot of people doing it these days?
No, it's kind of a dying art. There are several beekeepers in Oklahoma. I mean, don't get me wrong, but I've noticed that in the 5 to 6 years that I've been in it, that there's fewer young beekeepers and tends to be a lot more older beekeepers. So it's kind of dying out, and I hate to see that, because it is a fun hobby to do, and it's not your normal hobby that most people would do, but it is quite fun to have with.
There are, we hear occasionally of problems with, I guess, mites or parasites with some of the bees, and can you explain a little bit of that problem?
Yeah, about 10 years ago, the bee industry in the United States became infected, for lack of a better word, with the varroa mite. It's a mite that came from Southeast Asia, and that particular mite was very destructive of the industry, and it really tended to put a lot of beekeepers out of business. They've learned to deal with the mite by using chemicals, but then you sort of get on a chemical springboard, and one chemical is good for a certain amount of time, and then you have to switch to another. So there are a lot of research going on now to produce bees that are resistant to these chemicals, and that's just one of the parasites. The other parasite, the tracheal mite, was a very devastating parasite for quite some time, until a brother Adam from Buckfast Abbey in England helped collect bee genome from around the world and helped produce a bee that is resistant to the trachea mite.
Oh, well, good. That's good news.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's always good news like that.
Right. Okay, so some work being done there to overcome the mite problem.
Right.
We also hear about Africanized bees, maybe aggressive bees, and we now had reports of them in Oklahoma.
Yes.
What should folks know about
well, the first
Africanized
thing
bees?
I would tell anyone, if you're out and walking along, you see a swarm of bees, specifically if they've lighted in a tree or a shrub, don't mess with them. Just let the police or the fire department know. They have the numbers to get in touch with either a pesticide service or with a beekeeper, and then let them take care of the swarm. That's your safest method to deal with them. Africanized bees have just recently been discovered in Oklahoma itself, and there is legislation underway to help the beekeepers of the state deal with this. And that's something that, you know, it's a fact of life. It's something we're going to live with. And so the safest thing for the public, though, is if you see a swarm or anything of that nature, just let the proper authorities know.
Okay, and if it's possible for beekeepers to have some Africanized bees come into the hives and sort of change the genetics?
Sometimes you can run into that. For instance, if a hive in a particular apiary swarms and the virgin queen becomes mated with an Africanized drone, that can happen. One of the ways that I deal with that is I have a line of bees that is produced down in Navasota, Texas by Bee Weaver.
Okay.
I use those queens. I requeen all of my hives yearly with those queens. They are designed, they're very gentle. They're designed to be resistant to both the varroa mite and the tracheal mite, so that allows me to not have to put chemicals in my hive.
Sure.
And that to me is the safest way of dealing with bees.
Okay, all right. So a new queen every year.
You bet.
Okay, well, I guess there are lots of equipment and lots of different things you use to work with your bees and to get a hive set up. You've got a few of those you want to?
Sure, let's go down here and take a look at it.
All right.
Thanks.
Well, Gary, here in this part of our arboretum, we've got some hives that you've been taking care of, and I was wondering, why did you pick this location for the hives?
This particular location, Steve, it's a good question that you asked me, because what I've done is I've chosen an east-facing portion of the hill. There's trees behind the hives that will protect the hives from noon on, so that once the sun, it shades them, and it helps the hive out a lot. Also, as you notice, it's sloping downhill just a little bit, which means there's good air drainage down from the top of the hill. There's also protection from the north side.
Okay.
So during the winter, they've got a good wind break, and it helps them out that way.
It's not a frost pocket.
There's not a frost pocket here. So that's very important on the hives. You want to protect them as much as possible. Obviously, if the bees were to choose to set up a natural hive in a tree or something like that, they would have already made those decisions ahead of time.
I see.
So,
and it's important to have a water source?
Yes, a water source nearby is very important. You want them to be able to do that and not be a nuisance to anyone. For instance, I have a hive at my house here in Stillwater, and what I've done is I've provided them with a water source there in the backyard, so that they don't become a nuisance gathering from someone's spa or a pool or something nearby. I also have a privacy fence in my backyard that forces the bees to fly above head height when they come into my yard. That way they don't provide a nuisance to anyone by collecting around the fence or flying through a cyclone fence, which they can do very easily.
Okay.
So those are the two items that I've done to help my neighbors deal with it. And of course, free honey from me always helps too.
I bet.
You bet.
Okay. Well, hey, the bees, as far as keeping them in the city limits, it's probably a good idea to check with City Hall.
City Hall, County Courthouse, either one of those. Most areas will allow this, but you don't want to be a nuisance, and that's the first thing that I make sure is that I let my people, my relatives or friends around me know. Yes, I do have bees. I don't want them to be a nuisance. Please let me know if they are a nuisance, and I'll deal with it immediately. Okay. And just be a good neighbor. That's all.
Okay. Well, these hives, they look like they're made up of 3 boxes each, most of them, and got one right here to kind of explain the setup.
Right. What I've done over here on the hives is I've got 3 boxes, of which 2 of the 2 bottom ones are what we call brood supers, but they're the same as what this is right here, which is a super with drawn comb in it.
Okay.
And you can see here that this comb is all been drawn out. What it looked like originally is this right here. This is what we call foundation.
Okay, this is man-made.
This is all man-made. What I've done is they take a solid sheet of wax, they'll run it through an embossing machine, they emboss the cells on it.
A little pattern of cells.
Right.
Okay.
The bees will take scales of wax that they produce, they'll chew them, combine them with their saliva, and then they will draw this comb out to create this kind of a frame.
Of that.
Now, you might not see here, right in here you can see there's some oddly shaped cells. They're kind of jagged or mismatched. Those kind of cells in a brood super would be where the queen would lay her drone eggs. She can choose to lay either male or female eggs. The males are drone, the females are worker bees.
Interesting.
And by doing that, They lay a certain amount of drones, and this allows the hive to maintain survival. It's part of their genetic makeup.
Okay, drones and workers.
Drones will go out and impregnate another queen, and that's how the hive helps keep itself healthy.
Okay.
So that's one of the reasons.
Well, Gary, this may sound like a really silly question, but what exactly is honey? How do the bees make it?
Well, what they do is they'll collect nectar from several sources. It could be from fruit trees, it could be from ornamental shrubs, it could be from weeds, it could be from flowers. Gardens are great place for bees to collect nectar from. And what they'll do is they take that nectar back to the hive, and the worker bees that take it back will pass it to what they call a nurse bee or a house bee. This house bee will, and in the passing, you've had enzymes from the worker bee and the house bee both combine with this nectar. This nectar is then stored in the cells, and the bees fan the cells to dry the water out.
With their wings?
They fan it. What they do is they'll get down at the front of the hive, and they get a circulating current of air going through that hive.
Interesting.
And it helps to evaporate the water in the nectar, and when it gets down to around 16 to 18% water content, they'll seal it over with a cap. That is nothing more than highly concentrated nectar, but it's developed into honey with the enzymes from the bees at that point.
Okay, so the honey is inside, stored inside all these little cells.
Right, stored right inside this.
And they have sort of a cap of
There's
more
a
wax.
cap laid over this.
Okay. So
and then
how do you get the honey out of the cells? I mean, it seems like it'd be tedious to draw all the honey out. What's a simple way to get the honey out of there?
It's a good question, Steve. Nowadays, with the modern conveniences that we have, I will take this particular frame and I would shave all of the caps off of this frame with an electric knife that I have.
Okay.
Do both sides.
Okay.
Once I've done both sides, then I have solid honey exposed.
Remove the cap.
I'll remove the cap first. Then I will put this frame in what I call a bicycle extractor. It looks like a big bicycle wheel with spokes. I can put 12 of these in the extractor, and then I turn the extractor on and slowly spin the honey out. And the reason why I say slowly is because this is a fragile item.
Okay, and the honey is so thick.
The honey is very thick and very heavy. It's 11 pounds of honey, I believe, or 11 pounds per gallon of honey, as opposed to 8 pounds and some odd for water.
Heavier
so
than
it's
water.
much heavier.
Okay, so it just drains out of there.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Well, right here we've got just a few items that we
Tools,
can use to look at the hive, and smokers.
Oh yeah, smokers are
important.
obviously. This is one of your key elements. This is how it looks like when you buy it from a company like Daydan or Kelly or someone like that.
Okay.
This is the one that I use now. It's user modified, as you can see. It makes me, or allows me to get the smoke into the hive a little better.
Okay.
But this particular item is you put tinder in here.
Fuel.
Exactly, and that's what the cardboard egg.
Okay.
Cardboard
just tear
is.
up the cardboard.
Tear it up, throw it in there.
carton,
There's a little bit of
burn
cedar shavings in there that also helps with mites.
that. Okay.
So you'll smoke your hive first. Then the next thing, once you've gotten into the hive, you need to have a hive tool. Simple, easy, just a little L-shaped piece of
Looks like a little
metal.
crowbar.
Exactly. That's it. It's just sort of a mini crowbar, and that's what it's used for. It's used to help pry the frames up because they become very sticky with propolis inside of a hive.
Okay.
There's more than one type of hive tool to utilize. I've got another one here, which looks like sort of a different shape, you can see. It's got an obvious hook that you can use to pry a frame up, and it's got a scraping area that you can use to scrape off the top of the frames if there's extra comb or something.
Okay.
Another item I've got here is
all the tools of the trade. And this,
yeah, and this is just a frame.
just to
grip, pick it up,
pull the frames.
That's it.
Okay. Well, so you're actually now going to take me into the hives, and we're going to tour the hive with the bees and everything.
You bet.
Okay. So I need to get suited up.
Well, unless you want to take a chance, I'd say, yeah, you need to get suited up. Right?
Let's go get suited up.
All right, let's go.
Well, we're all suited up. We've got our smoker lit here. We're gonna smoke the bees out of the hive. And just in case you're wondering at home, our videographer, Craig Woods, also has his bee suit on, so he's not gonna get stung while he's shooting this. But Gary, I meant to ask you, why are there 3 boxes in the hive?
Well, that's a good question, Steve. These boxes are what we call brood supers. And what we do is I keep the 2 supers on the bottom for the bees year round. The one above that, which is this top one, which you see I'm putting the smoke into right now, that is for the beekeeper.
Okay.
That's where I'll put my honey supers or anything like that to allow them a chance to gather the nectar and give me lots of honey at the end of the season.
Okay, so they keep the bottom 2, and you
bet.
Keep the top one.
Yeah, you got to keep them. They have to have enough to be able to make it through the winters here in Oklahoma. Oklahoma's not as bad as up north as far as cold winters is concerned, but they still have to have approximately 60, 70, 80 pounds of honey reserves to make it through, because you never know whether it's going to be a mild winter or a very harsh one.
Sure.
So I always leave 2 boxes on for them and do that. Now in this particular one here, Steve, you can see this is foundation. They just now have started working on it.
Starting to build some out here on the edge.
Right, that's what we call brace comb. It's at the bottom of it, and it's typically something that I won't use, but you can see they're working very placidly. They're not doing a lot. They're very calm.
Building up those little structures, those little cells.
Exactly, and that's one of the reasons why I like this race of bees, this particular type of bees. And again, I got these from Bee Weaver down in Texas. They're very, very calm bees, very calm, easy to work with, and that's one of the key elements that I like more than anything. Now let me get down past this super, and we'll be into the top of what I call my brood nest. There's actually 3 casts
lots of
bees
bees there.
Oh, you bet. But again, see how calm they are? They're not moving around. They're not flying up into our face. They're a very calm bee. Now this will excite them a little bit. They'll start getting down. And that's what we want them to do. We want them to get down in between. Okay. So that we can work it. And all we're doing at this point, Steve, is we're wanting to get in and do an inspection of the hive, see what's going on inside.
Okay.
Do we have a queen? Do we have a healthy hive? And so on and so forth. And what I do here is I break these. You can see all this propolis here that's built up in between these frames?
That was the material you were talking about earlier.
Exactly. It's just like a glue. And it has an antibiotic property. So they use it, very much to seal all the cracks and crevices up in their hive. And that's how we keep the hive nice and airtight during the winters.
Wow, lots of bees.
Yeah. Now here's a prime example of both worker cells and drone cells. All these little bullet-shaped caps, those are drone cells. In fact, right here is a drone that's emerging right now. So it's this particular hive, obviously the queen started laying a lot of drones. And here's something else that's really interesting that a lot of people need to see is a queen cup. This type of cup right here, where it's positioned on this frame, lets me know that this hive wants to put a new queen in it. It wants a new queen, which is why I've got this hive scheduled for a new queen. And they build a cup like that where the queen will come and lay an egg, or the worker bees could transfer an egg in there, produce royal jelly that will allow that worker bee to become
a queen.
A queen.
So they build her a throne, and they provide her with the food that she likes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now see how there's an upper layer of honey right here?
Sure.
And then below that, all these are worker cells.
A darker color.
A darker color. What they have done, this is a very healthy laying pattern. But what they've done is they always keep honey and pollen above where the brood cells and stuff are. Smart. And you can see right now they're working and filling these empty cells because these have already been hatched in or laid in. Okay. And they're all pupating now. So they're filling those empty cells with pollen or honey, and they're getting the nest populated. This particular frame is a very good laying pattern for this queen, which makes me very happy to see that she's still going.
Great.
And then what I'll do is just sort of work myself into the rest of the hive a little at a time. I move slow. I don't want to make anyone very nervous. You know, you see a couple, you know, 2 or 3 flying around, but that's all. And in any particular hive, all you're wanting to do is make sure you've got a good laying queen when you come in and look at it like this.
Okay.
And the way you can tell that without seeing the queen is just to find eggs.
Okay.
If you can find eggs, then you can pretty much guarantee that you've got a queen that's healthy, laying lots of eggs, and your hive's doing good. I'm trying to get into the very center of this brood nest, which makes it a little easier for me to determine conditions. Here's a good way. There we go. Now you can see this one has got, if you look down in here real tight, you'll see lots of little white larvae.
Oh yeah.
Maybe very difficult to see,
Kind
but
of curled up in there.
that lets me know there is a queen in this hive.
And a good healthy queen.
A good healthy queen. She's come through, and all this that has hatched out, she has impregnated them. Yeah, she's already impregnated is the wrong word. She's laid new eggs, and they're pupating. Same on this side.
So how many times a year do you need to inspect the hive like this?
I will probably inspect this, you know, all of my hives I probably go through about maybe 3 or 4 times during the honey season. I don't want to get into them very often.
Sure.
Because once they start laying honey, or I'm sorry, once they start producing honey, the less you disturb the nest, the better it is. Every time I open this nest up and put this back, you know, I do take a chance of killing my queen.
Sure.
And I don't want to do that.
Okay.
So that's just, it's good practice, I should say, to do it like that.
Makes sense.
Oh, you bet. Now this particular hive, as you can see, there's a lot of eggs up here on the front. We saw one full solid frame over here, and then we saw a lot that's just been laid within the last week or so here. So this queen is probably somewhere in this top. What I really ought to do with this hive, and will in the next day or so, is reverse these hive supers, because the bottom one is probably empty and has lots of room for her to lay eggs in.
So Gary, this hive is in great shape, right?
Yeah, I'm very happy with this hive.
Okay. Well, if someone wanted to get started and purchase a hive, what would a setup like this cost? Just this one hive?
This would run about $150.
Okay.
And then with the queens, you get what you pay for.
Okay.
A little bit more, a little bit less.
Okay, so the better queens are going to cost a little bit more, a little bit better genetics.
Right.
That kind of thing.
Exactly right. That's exactly right.
All right. And if someone here in Oklahoma wanted to get started keeping bees, what are some of the groups that they
There's 2 groups in Oklahoma that are very good. Oklahoma Beekeepers Association, organization I should say, and then the Northeast Oklahoma Beekeepers Association. 2 really good groups.
All right, so you could check out those websites and find out all you need to know and get going.
All right.
Well, Gary, thanks so much for
Steve,
taking us into the hive.
I've enjoyed it, sir.
Appreciate this.
You're welcome.
Thank you.